We'll come to order, and we're going to start in a subcommittee since it's just me and Barb. So, Senator Koenig, we're going to start with you with Senate Bill 826, and you can start whenever you're ready.
Thank you, members of the committee. Senator Andrew Koenig from the 15th District here to present Senate Bill 826. This is would put a prohibition on using a federal digital currency as far as the public entities go. It's very similar to what we had on the floor last week. The one difference is that was narrowed to the state treasurer's office, so this would be a little bit broader encompassing. I think this is important because if a federal digital currency were to happen, there would be potentially tracking, the federal government could be tracking people's personal purchases, which I think would be very detrimental and potentially a violation of the Fourth Amendment. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator Roberts. We're starting with Senate Bill 826, Senator Koenig's digital currency. And do you want a second do you have any questions for him?
I do not.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone here wishing to testify in favor of Senate Bill 826? Seeing none, anyone here to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 826? Seeing none, anyone here for informational purposes only for Senate Bill 826? Seeing none, Senator, any final comments?
Oh, it was nice and quick for you. So
You can move on to your next appointment now. Thank you, Senator. All right. Next up, we will hear House Bill 1803 with Representative Thompson. You can come forward at this point in time, and you can start whenever you're ready. Welcome to the Senate.
Good afternoon, and thank you. Terry Thompson, representative of the 53rd District. Basically, I'm here today to talk about House Bill 1803, which raises the cap on the Missouri Link Deposit Program. It passed the House with 138 yes votes. It is identical to the version of the Senate Bill 736, which passed out of this committee 6-0 and approved by the Senate 24-9. Thank you for the opportunity, Madam Chair, and I'd answer any questions.
Questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none, anyone here wishing to testify in favor of House Bill 1803?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, David Kent, registered lobbyist for the Missouri Bankers Association, here in support of House Bill 1803. MOBUX is a great program. We'd like to increase that cap, which will enable us to provide additional loans at a lower interest rate to small businesses as well as to the ag community. So with that, I'll help answer any questions.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up in favor of House Bill 1803.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Heidi Geis-Buehler-Sutherland. I'm here on behalf of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry. This program is a great economic driver, and it's really a godsend for a lot of small businesses around the state, so we're also in favor.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, next up in favor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Mike Winter, representing the Missouri Credit Union Association. We do have some credit unions who participate in the program, and with the cap being raised, look forward to having more of them provide services as well.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up in favor.
Madam Chair, Andrew Arnold, on behalf of the Independent Bankers Association, in support of the bill.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up in favor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman. Heath Clarkston here on behalf of FCS Financial, in full support of the bill, just like your bill, and I filled out a form online.
It's a great bill.
And I agree with the Missouri Chamber. It's a godsend of a bill.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Oh, questions for the witness? Seeing none, thanks for your testimony. Next up in favor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman. David Overfelt for Associated Industries of Missouri. And yes, this is a great program for our small members, and we appreciate your sponsorship, and we appreciate the House sponsor.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? Seeing none, next up in favor.
All right, Madam Chairman, members of the committee, Ben Travelis with Missouri Farm Bureau. We do have member adopted policy that calls for this expansion of this program. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up in favor. Seeing none, anyone here to testify in opposition to House Bill 1803? Seeing none, anyone here for informational purposes only for House Bill 1803? Seeing none, Representative, any final comments? All right. Thank you for coming over. Thank you for your presenting your bill. And I guess we're going to have to take a pause because I don't see our next bill sponsor, and we kind of need to establish a quorum at some point too. We don't have any bills to exec on today since we spent last week's hearing execing on everything that we're just kind of catching up on everything. So we are just waiting on Senator Moon and to establish a quorum. So just hang tight and we'll try to get him here ASAP. You can proceed when you're ready.
Well, thank
I
you.
guess I should say the bill number, Senator Moon, Senate Bill 1028.
Thank you again for waiting for me. I apologize for being late. I'm Mike Moon. I represent the 29th Senatorial District, and I'm here to present Senate Bill 1028, which will primarily just establish a joint committee to look at the feasibility of being able to use gold and silver coinage, and also to make sure that it's consistent with Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution. It might give just a little bit of background on this. We probably are all familiar with the term central bank digital currency. And President Biden, I believe, about 2 years ago now, instructed the Treasury Department to look into the feasibility of digitizing the U.S. dollar. And while many of us use our phones, which I do frequently to make purchases, use credit cards, and that's all digital in a sense, there is no control over it, which I think is good. And some people think it's far-fetched to believe that a governmental entity might be able to control whether the money the person invests or uses to purchase things. And Madam Chair, if you want to establish a quorum, that's great.
I would love to do that. If you'll take a pause. Barb, would you please call the roll?
Senators Crawford.
Here.
Trent. Brown. Hoskins. Huff. Mosley. Roberts.
And we do have a quorum. Thank you, senators, for coming to help us establish that quorum, and you may proceed.
Thank you. And so with that, if there ever is a central bank that will oversee and perhaps control digital currency the way that we use it today, that might not be a good thing. And just take it, I see the committee here made up of at least two different parties. And what if the controlling party, whatever it be, Republican, Democrat, or whatever you want, decided that they didn't like a person's politics, or they didn't like the business endeavors they participated in, didn't like the purchases they make? That could be controlled digitally, where they could either type some keys into a computer and say, Senator Moon, we don't like what you're purchasing, we don't like your investments portfolio, and so we're going to limit the money that you have access to. That's concerning. And while it might seem far-fetched, it is a distinct possibility that that could happen. And so establishing a joint committee that would look at areas that would allow for, if possible, and just check the feasibility of whether or not we could move to an alternative currency like gold or silver. I think that's something that we should look into.
Questions for the bill sponsor? I actually have a couple.
Okay.
I have some questions or some concerns about whether some of these gold and silver bills are constitutional. And so I think this idea might be a good way to get to some answers. I do have a question, though. I noticed that you didn't have a sunset, and we almost always have a sunset on committees and things like that, and this one does not have one.
Right.
Is there a specific reason for that, or?
Well, I'm hopeful that this would be something that the committee, once established, would see that there is a need, and if there is, I don't think that that would end. But that's for up to future discussion. If they were looking at something that I haven't looked at, I'm certainly open.
I wonder if
making
we
that
shouldn't
change.
put a sunset of like a year and a half, or whatever the time is, to really make them focus on it now, and maybe with the option of extending the sunset at some point in time. Would you necessarily be opposed to that? Because I think we do need to look into this just to get some real answers on whether this is even feasible or not.
Your point of the sense of urgency makes sense, and if that's what it takes to get them to act, I think I would be agreeable to that.
Okay.
Pardon me.
So just some general questions. I don't know how much you've looked into this topic, but what do you think, and maybe this isn't your expertise or what you're even thinking about along the lines with this bill, but one of the questions I have is, if we required, like say we required part of our state funds to be in gold and silver, do you have any idea as far as storage room, how long some of that, how much room some of that would take? Have you looked into that portion of this before at all, or is your focus more just checking the constitutionality?
I have not looked at the storage situation, so I can't say to that.
So, I think things like that are legitimate questions
Absolutely.
that maybe this could answer.
Yeah.
How much is that? I mean, if we required 1%, how much room is that? What's the cost associated with keeping that, storing it, rather? I just have a lot of questions, and I think this actually might be a good way to get to the bottom of it. And do we know, are there any businesses that we know of that actually accept gold and silver at this point in time, or do you think they at this point, or?
There are some, I think they call them goldbacks, and I've got a picture on my phone I can show you sometime later if you'd like to see it, and it's smaller, probably about that.
Is it kind of tin, like
It feels like it's a
metallic?
Yeah,
Yes.
it does, because it actually has gold in it, and it's embedded in that piece of material, and it has a dollar value. I think one is worth $4.40, something like that, and they make them in different denominations up to about $25, I think. And so I believe that those could be used as in transactions even now, if
Okay.
someone wanted to barter that way.
And then my last question is, do you know if any, there was a piece in some of that legislation that was added onto one of my bills that talked about minting coins. Do you know if any other states have taken that on? Any idea? I know I'm kind of broadening the scope of your bill, but I thought you might have checked into some of this stuff.
I'm not aware of any.
Okay. All right. Well, I personally think we probably maybe need to do this before we pass any gold and silver legislation, just being transparent, because I do have questions, and I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I don't know if it's a good idea or a bad idea, just because there are several questions that I think need to be looked into. So,
and I've had filed bills before, and I've seen the others, and they don't seem to be getting a lot of traction, which I think is an important issue if we looked at what we think could happen. And if this is what gets it started, I hope we can do something.
I am not opposed to doing that. I think it might be needed, honestly, before we were to pass some of that legislation. Just my thought. But I do appreciate you presenting the bill today, and we'll talk offline about just moving forward, things like that. But any other senators have any questions for the sponsor? I kind of took over. All right. Anyone here wishing to testify in favor of Senate Bill 1028? Seeing none. Anyone here wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 1028? Seeing none. Anyone here for informational purposes only? Seeing none. Senator, any final comments?
Thank you for waiting on me.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate you bringing that bill forward. And with no further business coming before this committee, I would make a motion that we adjourn. Do I have a second? I have a second. All those in favor say aye. We are adjourned.